Hey there, everyone. It's Kelly from Kelly's Astrology here. Welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about relationship astrology. In fact, this is going to be the first in a series of some videos on relationship astrology. Now, there's really two different ways we can approach relationship astrology. The first part is to have a look at what's inside you in astrology. So what your birth chart has to say about who you are as a person. Astrologers can look at the astrology in your personal birth chart to see what that says about your experiences in relationships, but also what it might indicate for your needs or your personal definition of what a great or an ideal relationship might be. The other way that astrologers can use astrology to understand relationship dynamics is to look at the astrological links between your birth chart and the birth chart of another person. Today, I'm going to focus on the what's inside of you part of relationship astrology. And that is going to help you get a sense of what you might be drawn to, or some of the specific types of energy or dynamics that you're gravitating towards within relationships. So while I know we often want to focus on what's going on between you and another person, and keep in mind that in relationship astrology, we can look at the dynamics or the trends or the tendencies between you and any other person. So this could be, you and another romantic partner, but it could be between you and a business associate, or between you and a close friend, or between you and a family member. And that technique of comparing your chart to somebody else's chart and looking at the aspects between the two is known as synastry. And that's one of our most popular relationship astrology techniques. But before we dive into that, which we will do in this video series, but not in this exact video, we need to have a sense of what's going on inside you. We need to kind of know what's in your heart and get a sense of what's reflected in your personal chart first, because that all plays into how you're going to respond to those astrological relationship dynamics that might be present between your chart and the chart of someone else. So to guide us with that, we're going to take a little look at Venus in your personal birth chart. And every time we talk about relationship astrology, I know students are very keen to talk about their Venus placement. And they often want to talk about the sign that Venus is in, or the house that their personal Venus is in. And those placements and features of your Venus are important. But even more important, I would argue, is the aspects that Venus is involved in. So Venus in your personal chart and what other planets in your birth chart or your natal chart are interacting with Venus for you. Because those aspecting planets that your Venus is involved with are really going to create some of the core tendencies and even describe some of the core needs that you'll have when you go into relationship. Now, if we were doing a whole workshop on this or a detailed training, we'd look at Venus in your chart making aspect to any of the other planets. But to keep this a little more brief and digestible for you at home, but mostly to illustrate the technique, what we'll do is we'll focus on Venus making aspects to either Jupiter or Saturn, or to the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So in this relationship astrology video, part 1, we're going to talk a little bit about what it might mean if you have Venus in aspect to Jupiter or Venus in aspect to Saturn in your personal birth chart. In part 2, I'm going to talk about what would it mean if you've got Venus in aspect to one of the outer planets in your personal birth chart. So just to give you a sense of where we're going today, what you can expect, and what's coming next in terms of the video series. Now, what you might have heard me reference already is this idea of aspects. And when we're talking about relationship astrology, a lot of it comes down to understanding aspects at a deeper level. And when I say that to students, I'm not saying you have to really be a master at aspects before you can do relationship astrology, but rather what I'm suggesting to you is that by exploring or learning or dabbling in relationship astrology, you're going to get better at aspects in astrology. So we're going to start with the aspects that are describing what's in your heart, in your chart, and then we move towards the aspects from your chart to the chart of another person. So if we're thinking about your own personal birth chart and we're thinking about Venus in your chart, we're thinking about Venus because she is the traditional planet of love and relationships. There are other planets in your chart that will play a huge role in describing and defining your personal relationship experiences. And I do cover those in my course on relationship astrology and introduction. So if you do want the full detailed 4-part training on relationship astrology, that's the course for you. But in terms of sharing something that will be helpful to everybody, we will focus on Venus today. Venus, and there's all kinds of both simple and complex techniques to do with Venus that go way back to the origins of astrology that tell us about our relationship prospects. So she is a very valid and worthy place to start on this journey of exploring relationships and astrology. So think about Venus in your personal birth chart and think about the aspects that she's involved in. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about Venus and Jupiter aspects specifically, and of course, Venus and Saturn aspects also in this video. But even before we get to the combination of Venus-Jupiter or the combination of Venus-Saturn, think for a moment about the kind of aspect that Venus is involved in. And I'm going to make a couple of points about those now. So if Venus in your personal birth chart is making a square aspect or an opposition aspect with another planet in your chart, that might create a relational dynamic that, while it's indicated, in your chart, it might be something that you play out with other people. Or that maybe you have Venus square Saturn or Venus opposite Jupiter in your personal chart. That kind of friction-filled square opposition aspect might be so big that when you get into relationship with other people, one of you takes maybe the Venus part of the aspect and another one of you might take the Jupiter or the Saturn part. Or it might be that the tension or the dynamic of that Venus aspect shows up in the dance between self and other. So we're always kind of navigating this, is it in my heart? Is it between our two hearts kind of space with relationship astrology? But I wanted to make that point that if we do have a big square or an opposition aspect in our personal birth chart involving the planet Venus, that's likely to describe a common relationship pattern or dynamic that we're exploring and expressing and kind of trying to get to know from different angles through the different types of people that we're in relationship with. If Venus in your chart is in a sextile or a trine aspect with another planet in your chart, that might be indicating something that you want to share that's a little bit more uplifting or pleasing in your relationships with others. So the kind of aspect does make a difference, but I don't want you to spend all your interpretive energy trying to decipher that, because what we've said there is enough to get you going. And the more meaningful, rich, layered part of your interpretation or of your understanding of your own relationship experiences will come from the nature of the planets that your Venus is in aspect to. So let's turn our attention to Venus-Jupiter aspects now. So we know that Jupiter is a planet of generosity, of adventure, of integrity, of faith and philosophy. So if in your birth chart you have an aspect between Venus and Jupiter, any kind of aspect, you can have Venus conjunct Jupiter, Venus square Jupiter, Venus sextile Jupiter, any of those 5 original or Ptolemaic aspects, they're the 5 aspects that I use in my work. You might use others, and that's okay, but I'll be giving my teaching and tips to you today through those 5 aspects that I do all of my work with. So if you have Venus and Jupiter in aspect in your chart, you're going to want love and relationships and interactions with other people that feel adventurous, that feel uplifting, that have that kind of optimistic mindset where you may be coming from a place of possibility and potential, and you're going to look for that to be shared or reflected back in the relationships that you form and with the people that you want to form a relationship with. So you may want a lot of variety with dating or romantic experiences. You might have a wide variety of friends or even professional associates. Because if you have Venus in aspect to Jupiter, there's an openness and even a curiosity to wanting to learn and grow by connecting with people who can show you things or share things with you that might be outside your personal experience or even outside your comfort zone. We know that Jupiter is a planet about growth and expansion. And so if Venus is in aspect to Jupiter in your personal birth chart, you're not going to want to feel restricted or restrained in any way. You can certainly make a commitment with somebody, but that commitment kind of has to have a quality of the searching, seeking, looking to have experiences together rather than just wanting to manage responsibilities. So that's a really key distinction between somebody who might have a Venus-Jupiter aspect in their birth chart, which is I want to have experiences, I want to, make life rich and interesting, versus somebody who has Venus-Saturn in their chart. They may be very aware of and sensitive to the responsibilities or that sort of weighty commitment of relationship, and they may be less interested in the experiences. So there's some differences there. Jupiter is also known as the lucky planet. And in relationship astrology, if you have a Venus-Jupiter aspect, the tendency or personality trait that is often associated with is generosity. So if you're somebody who has Venus in aspect to Jupiter in your chart, you might be very generous or very giving or very supportive of your loved ones or your friends or the people that you're in close connection with. You might be giving abundantly, whether that's time or encouragement. Maybe there's some financial blessings that you give to others. It might also show that you receive that through the realm of relationship as well. So that's something to really enjoy. The catch is, and this is where I can kind of show the Venus sextile Jupiter, Venus trine Jupiter versus, say, Venus square or Venus opposite Jupiter. So if we know that Venus-Jupiter contacts create a quality of generosity, then when we have Venus in sextile or trine to Jupiter, we might see this kind of free-flowing or mutually reciprocated generosity where you're giving in some ways to your partner and they're giving in other ways. And there's this real sort of equanimity about the give and flow of abundance there. When we see Venus make a square or an opposition to Jupiter, we get what I call unreciprocated generosity, or I should say, we get the potential for unreciprocated generosity. And it's not a bad problem to have. What that tends to mean is you might be someone who gives a lot to others, but doesn't always get back. And other people might like being your friend or being in relationship with you, or even being in business, doing business with you, because you're always in that going over and above space, that generosity of Venus-Jupiter. But when we've got the square or opposition, we're kind of being generous to excess. There's too much of a good thing here. And while that can be great for other people, that can be a little bit draining or depleting for you personally. So you can see how the quality of the aspect comes in, but the topic or the theme doesn't really change. We're still talking about Venus-Jupiter and generosity, but we're talking about it in a balanced, manageable, kind of mutual way, if it's a sextile or a trine, or we're talking about it in an imbalanced or an out of balance kind of excessive way that might have a little bit of a jerky quality if it's Venus square or opposite Jupiter. So hopefully that is clear on that distinction, and also gives you something to think about if you do have a Venus-Jupiter aspect. Now, Jupiter also symbolizes the things we believe in, our faiths, our philosophies, the things that give meaning or a sense of purpose to our life. And if you're somebody who has a Venus-Jupiter aspect in your personal natal chart, you're going to want to be in relationship with people who have the same or similar beliefs to you. It might be really tricky to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't share the same values or believe in the same things to be important as you do. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that you need to be in a relationship with someone who's of the exact same religion or cultural faith for you. That's not what I'm saying here. In fact, Venus-Jupiter prefers the contrast and the kind of broadened experience of being in relationship to people who might come from different cultural or religious or spiritual backgrounds to you. But often when you dig into it, you can find some really common core values or core beliefs. And it's those core values or core beliefs that you want to make sure you've got a fair amount on the same page if you're a Venus-Jupiter person, so that you might practice, slightly different iterations of a faith or a spiritual path, but you kind of have the same things at the center of what you're doing. So hopefully that's giving you a sense of Venus-Jupiter aspects. I love talking about aspects with students and in videos like this, because so much of our work, both in natal chart interpretation and in timing and forecasting and in relationships and compatibility, always comes down to aspects. And so I do want to just add the qualifier that I'm giving you some of the highlights of Venus-Jupiter aspects in the realm of relationships, but there are lots of nuances here. So let me know in the comments below how you relate to that Venus-Jupiter material, especially if this is an aspect that you share, or maybe you have a friend, a romantic partner, or a family member that has a Venus-Jupiter aspect in your chart, in their chart, and you can see how it works out for them. So to contrast that, let's talk about Venus in aspect to Saturn, which is so different, but equally important, of course, if that's what's going on in the chart. So keep in mind, in this video, we're talking about relationship astrology from the perspective of understanding what you as an individual might be looking for based on the aspects that Venus in your personal chart is making. We've just talked about Venus in aspect to Jupiter, which won't apply to everybody. I don't have a Venus-Jupiter aspect, but some of you will. And next, we're going to talk about Venus in aspect to Saturn in your natal chart. So if you have a Venus-Saturn aspect, and keep in mind this could be Venus conjunct Saturn, sextile Saturn, square, trine, or opposite Saturn, there's going to be some really common themes or qualities here. So Venus-Saturn people, so if you have Venus in aspect to Saturn in your birth chart, you're going to have more of a commitment-focused lens through which you view relationships. You're going to be interested in forming longer-lasting relationships. You might be interested in relationships that have a recognized or a formal type of commitment. It might be buying a house together or building a home or a life together. It might involve marriage. It might involve children. It doesn't have to involve all of those components, but it's going to want to involve something that's fairly structured, where there is a quality, where there are qualities of stability, security, and reliability. That's really important for Venus-Saturn. If you're a Venus-Saturn person, you're going to want to feel that the people that you're in relationship with, friends, business associates, romantic partners, that you can rely on them, and you will be a person who can be relied upon. So it kind of goes both ways there. So there may be more of a serious, perhaps cautious approach to romantic relationships if you have Venus in aspect to Saturn. And that may be noticeable, especially in the early parts of forming new relationships. So forming a friendship or forming a romantic relationship. Venus-Saturn people can sometimes be a little shy or a little bit hesitant because Venus-Saturn people have this deep sense that once I'm committed, I'm all in, or I'm in for good. And so they sometimes want to take their time assessing whether the person or the situation is going to be a good fit for them. So we can have a slower pace with Venus-Saturn, and that can be appropriate with this. So there's also a very practical component to Venus-Saturn individuals when they form relationships. There's a sense of wanting to be realistic, but also wanting to manage the time that you share with your special people effectively. The idea here is that we know we need quality time to build a solid foundation, and a Venus-Saturn person is going to be committed to making sure there is time, such a Saturn word, right, to share together. So, balancing external responsibilities like career or financial needs or health needs with the obligations you might have in a relationship or a friendship will all be things that you want to factor in if you're a Venus-Saturn person. Now, Venus-Saturn people have this kind of earthy, rock-like quality to them where they are always going to be there. They're going to be that rock or that support for others, but they're also going to gravitate towards people who have that solidness or even kind of an earthy quality to them. So that grounding energy is really necessary. You're going to crave that if you're a Venus-Saturn person. One thing that Venus-Saturn individuals can have to kind of work through or grapple with themselves, particularly if Venus is in a square or an opposition with Saturn, is this sense of being worthy. Do I deserve love? Am I worthy just by my mere existence of being treasured and respected and celebrated? And sometimes with a Venus-Saturn aspect, even though we know intellectually that, of course, we are worthy of that being treasured, we don't always believe that, or we don't always act like that. And that's often got to do with our early conditioning. So our childhood, our teenage years, some of our early adulthood experiences. When we're a Venus-Saturn person, sometimes we are shown or taught, or we're led to believe from our childhood or our youth that it's less about who we are and more about what we can do for others. So sometimes Venus-Saturn aspect people are really responsible and reliable. They can be very hardworking. They can always be that person that remembers birthdays or shows up on time or is really solid and reliable. But sometimes there's a sense that if they're not, people won't love them. And that may not be a conscious sense. This can be an unconscious driver around relationships. So if you are a Venus-Saturn person, this can be a really interesting thing to explore. Your willingness to take on challenges or put in the effort on behalf of your special people. It's great to do that, but you want to make sure that you're not doing that at the expense of being tender with yourself. So learning tenderness and learning vulnerability is a huge relationship lesson for Venus-Saturn people. Maybe not for every single one of you, but for many, many of you that I've had the pleasure of speaking with in consults and classes, there's a sense of the Venus-Saturn person wanting to be so stoic and strong for others that they maybe didn't learn or still have to figure out how to ask for help or how to show their soft side, how to be vulnerable and perhaps have needs or share those needs with other people. Maybe even learning how to trust that other people might be able to help you out with your own needs. And so I would say to my Venus-Saturn clients, if you're struggling to kind of get those deeper, tender connections that you love, it might be that instead of doing more for others, you're actually having to learn how to let other people in to your own heart and to allow them to help you, to figure out how to receive rather than be the strong, stoic one. So that's something to keep in mind. Let me know if you have a Venus-Saturn aspect and whether you relate to that piece or not. I always like to be careful that I'm not telling you how it is and rather describing for you some of the common tendencies, acknowledging that every single birth chart is so unique and you might have a Venus-Jupiter aspect or a Venus-Saturn aspect. But in part 2 of this video, I'm going to talk about Venus in aspect to Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. And maybe you have Venus in aspect to 2 planets and there's something you're trying to navigate between the needs of those 2 planets, which might be a little conflicting. At the end of the day, if you have a Venus-Saturn aspect, there's a deep sense of wanting to honor tradition, ritual, and to even have a sense of your relationship or love life being accepted or honored within your community. So whether it's a cultural paradigm, whether it's a spiritual paradigm, there's a sense of wanting to be like, this is acknowledged and I'm safe in this relationship because it is also part of the community ties that I share. So relationships that have long-term stability, that offer a safe, secure place, and that are going to have that sense of a really stable routine or rhythm to them, that's a Venus-Saturn aspect person's happy place when it comes to connecting with others. So as always, this is just a little taste of how some of these planetary aspects can show up in terms of defining and describing your relationship experiences. I always love to hear more from all of my listeners and watchers. So let me know via the comments below how you relate to this. If you have more questions, let me know too. I'll be back in the next video with more in this series on Venus in aspect to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Until then, everyone, I hope you enjoy the realm of relationships and we'll talk soon.